Today we have the pleasure of interviewing the one, the only Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
So many people, you have so many fans, first of all. So tell us, but before we get into your journey, I kind of make everyone do legal hot topics. I know you're probably familiar with Wendy Williams' hot topics. So we're going to do 2 hot topics that have kind of been trending. One of them being UVA, which is actually my school. It would be my school. Is the second school now behind Colorado to decide that they're not going to no longer have legacy admissions. And we already know about the big Supreme Court affirmative action being removed, and everybody's saying, well, you know what? Let's just make it even across the board. Everybody just comes in on their own accord.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on schools saying, okay, well, there's no affirmative action, we're gonna take legacy away?
Listen, I appreciate the clapback. I'm here for it, especially since we know that the now nominee for the Republicans, I seriously doubt that he would have had his spot in business school but for being a legacy. And so, legacy gets that privilege, while going after things like affirmative action was trying to bring about some sort of equity, or at least semblance of equity. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's only appropriate. You go ahead and you free up some spots. Being born with a silver spoon in your mouth should not give you a leg up from somebody who's worked really hard their entire lives to have a spot. So if we're going to open up spots, let's open them up, and let's make sure that they're available for everybody. So I appreciate it.
That's a great response. I definitely feel the same way. I mean, I went to UVA, and as you know, it's predominantly white school.
Yeah.
But we have a great Black Student Association there that I'm still connected with to this day. But, sometimes, I go in certain rooms and they're like, oh, you went to UVA. And it's almost like sometimes you get that feeling like, well, maybe they don't think that I got in because of...
On your own merit.
On my own merit.
Yeah.
So, okay, you're right. Let's just wipe it clean.
And you bring up a really good point, because affirmative action was never about giving an opportunity to someone who could not meet the merit. It was about making sure that we were looking at the full spectrum of people. And we know that historically in this country, especially when it comes to education, there are different folk that are historically overlooked, regardless of their talents. And so just like you brought up an amazing point, you were qualified. The question is, would UVA have taken a look at you but for affirmative action to find out that they could have this beautiful Black woman who was qualified and could add to the fabric of who UVA is? We don't know. And some people have to be told, y'all got to look at everybody. And that's what affirmative action did. It wasn't a matter of you have to, they like to use the quota language.
Yes.
It was about making sure that you're looking at everyone.
Yes, I think that's a beautiful way to put it. Speaking of trying to figure out requirements, another hot topic, reparations across the country. I know California, recently New York, they're looking to push finally towards figuring out a way to move forward with reparations for Black Americans in this country. The issue, at least recently, that's been brought up is, well, how do we decide who qualifies? I know in New York, the recent thing was, well, you have to absolutely be a descendant from a slave. You can't be a Caribbean Black, or you can't be a Black person that maybe came to Africa and came later. So it's like, what are your thoughts generally on reparations? Because again, I would like to see if it's going to happen, that it's kind of consistently rolled out across the board. I don't know how hard that would be, because I know each state likes to do, I know you're a congresswoman, each state likes to do whatever they want to do, but I would like to see it as much as possible consistently rolled out. What are your thoughts?
I don't know about consistency. I mean, I think that's why you see someone like Sheila Jackson Lee, who has been a champion of reparations on the federal level, because there does need to be some continuity across the board. Otherwise, everybody gonna run to whichever state and be like, "Yo, I need mine," right? Exactly, right. And so we don't want to see that. This is something that definitely needs to be thought through. But when you have people that aren't even willing to do the studies, aren't willing to invest to make sure that we can roll this out the right way. And I think that's where we have to start, just like anything else. We have to do the research. We have to figure out what would this look like in cost if we did it this way, or what about us doing it this way? You know, I think just this past week I saw, I don't remember which celebrity, but it was actually a celebrity, and I was like, I don't know that that's not necessarily a bad idea, but I'd have to think through it a lot. One of the things that they propose is black folk not have to pay taxes for a certain amount of time, because then again, that puts money back in your pocket. But at the same time, it may not be as objectionable to some people about actually giving out dollars. Yeah. But obviously then you start dealing with the different tax brackets and things like that. And that's one of the reasons that, you know, we argue the reparations make sense, because so many black folk, not only do you owe for the labor that was stolen and killed and all the other things, right? But the fact is, like, we end up being so far behind, right? And so it's like, how do you bring forth people? Exactly. And so it's like, if you do the no tax thing for people that are already, say, struggling and aren't really paying taxes in the first place, it doesn't really, exactly.
They may want those checks like they got during COVID.
Exactly. So, you know, but I think that we first need to do a study. We need to be very thoughtful. We need to talk about what will the implications be on not only the descendants of slaves, but also as it relates to the country as a whole. Like, we need to have a full understanding so that it's not so much conjecture, because what happens is everybody hypothesizes about what reparations will do on both sides, and then there's a breakdown, because one side says it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread, the other side says it's going to be disastrous, instead of actually getting the data to show us these are the problematic parts, these are the not so problematic parts, and us actually crafting a thoughtful way forward. But to think that America doesn't owe the descendants of slaves is an error.
Well, obviously you're a congresswoman, so you know this. Wouldn't it maybe be easier for it to maybe just then be federal legislation? That way all states would have
no. This is what I'm absolutely arguing for that.
Okay.
It absolutely needs
state
to
kind of doing their own thing. Just like one legislation, each state follows this.
Yes.
Okay, definitely.
Yes.
So, again, I don't know if and when this will ever happen, but it's just an interesting thing to think about. It was obviously that something that came up in the news recently. On to why we're here. It's all about you. It's all about Representative Jasmine. Thank you for playing that round of legal hot topics. So take us back a little bit. Who were you before, Congressman Jasmine Crockett? Like, who were you before? Let's say, we won't take it too far back, but how you were raised. Are you like an only child? Like, were you into high school? Like, who were you before you even entered into like the college law school space?
Yeah, so I've always been the same. Always been the same. Okay. It's so funny when, my childhood friends, even back to elementary, I saw something that somebody posted just last week about me. I have always been the same. It's just a matter of how many cameras were rolling to see like who I am. But I've always been active in a gazillion organizations because my mom threw me into Top Teens, Upward Bound, MyUp, you name it, I was a part of it. And so she always wanted to make sure I was busy, number one. Number two, I was always in some sort of leadership position. Okay. So whether it was student government that I was elected to, or whether it was in one of those organizations, like I was a national officer in Top Teens of America. Okay. So I've always been a leader, always looked out for other people, and never really held my tongue. Okay. So that's who I've always been. As far as actual politics, I wasn't that girl. So I did do Model UN when I was younger, but I still wasn't into politics. It was just like me trying out so many different things because my mom wanted me to have life figured out at 18, which clearly did not work out. I knew
like
nothing. Yeah, no, it's like, I mean, she's happy for sure, but did I ever be like, oh, mama, I'm gonna go to Congress? Like, no, that never came out of my mouth. So, I was always the person that was looking out for the next person, though. Okay. And I thought that meant that I would end up becoming a doctor. I was always a lot stronger in math and science. Really? I was not a history buff. Oh. I never took one poli-sci course in college or anything like that. But after doing a musical, I was recruited to do mock trial, and I became a national All-American in mock trial, and it was my mock trial coach who actually was like, you should apply to law school. And I did. I got a full ride. So I went. I said I could quit if I didn't like it. I was top 10% of my class. I stayed in law school. I loved it. And the rest is kind of history. But that's really more so been the trajectory of my life, where it's a matter of me kind of listening to the space and the people around me and kind of leaning into it versus me having it all figured out.
Okay. Well, you answered my second question, which was, why law school then? Because, people have different journeys into law and why they want to become a lawyer. And I think, and I don't know when it happened. I don't know if it happened in college.
Yeah,
but there was a hate crime, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more, because some people may not know that about you, that kind of maybe further solidified, like, I'm definitely going to be a lawyer.
Yeah. So all this, literally, when I say listen to the universe, all this was happening at the same time. So it was my junior year or my sophomore year. I'm getting confused now. But anyway, I went to school in Memphis. And if anybody knows anything about Memphis, Memphis is black. But I attended Rhodes College, which is the same school that Amy Coney Barrett attended, which it's amazing that we came out of the same institution.
I know.
It's very hard to believe, but nevertheless. And so the school, though, is like this anomaly in the middle of North Memphis, because there were only 18 black students in my class. In college. This is a college campus, and there were 18 of us, and there weren't 18 of us that graduated. So many left before we graduated, but nevertheless, it was sophomore or junior. I don't know why. I guess I'm getting old now. But either way, I became the victim of a series of hate crimes along with my black classmates. Okay. So they were putting like these Jack the Ripper style like hate letters into our on-campus mailboxes. So it's like they would cut out like letters, and it would say all kinds of like random bad stuff, but it really was so violating because you knew it was someone that knew you.
Right. Because
your on-campus mailbox number is not like public information. So they specifically targeted us. They were keying different cars. Like my best friend Summer, her car was keyed with the N-word on it. It was just all this stuff. And so you're walking around campus and, for years you thought, these are my friends. Like, what's happening? And then you start questioning everybody except for the few black folk that are on campus with you. And so, I was dealing with that. I was dealing with my mock trial coach recruiting me at the same time. And everything just seemed like it was leading me to law school. We had a lawyer from the Cochran firm that showed up. The school had hired the Cochran firm to try to investigate and figure out what happened.
Did you guys ever figure out?
They never figured it out. But the lawyer that came to see me, that was appointed like over me, was a black woman who had graduated from the University of Houston School of Law. And she became my shero. And when I did ultimately decide that I was going to go to law school, I wanted to go to University of Houston. So I actually started at Thurgood, and some things went down. And then I ended up transferring, and I transferred across the street to University of Houston. But, again, all of those experiences, in my opinion, was just kind of God, like, yelling at me and telling me, girl, this is where you going, not where you think you are. And he led me to the law.
So with that being said, what was your favorite law school class? I always try to guess. I'll let you know if my guess is right.
Interestingly enough, my favorite was, you're going to have to talk about a basic one then, if you're going to guess it. Because it was a specialized class. No. But it's the same thing. It actually was criminal law.
Okay, it was
crim was law. Yeah. It was mental health issues in criminal law, and
interesting. That is a specialty.
Yeah, it was a specialty.
That was a class.
It was really cool. And at the time we had I can't think of her name, but she had killed like her kids. She had drowned her kids in Texas. Her name started with an A. But anyway, it was really interesting to hear like from the lawyers that were defending her and talking about like the mental health issues. It was really interesting. I used to love criminal law classes in general, but I was like, I will never do criminal law because I don't want somebody to try to kill me. That was like my big thing. And then of course I became a criminal defense attorney. But in law school, you couldn't have paid me to say that I would ever do criminal law.
That you would ever do criminal law. Yeah, I think I would have guessed maybe even constitutional law, even though it's very difficult. That was a very difficult course. It's like, it in was hindsight, very hard. I realized how important it is. Yeah. When taking it, I was like, this is really hard.
No, I hated con law.
I had to really buckle down to get it. When you were at University of Houston, I mean, I know obviously you had the hate crime in your undergrad studies, but I don't know what's the Black population at that school, but did you ever feel like you faced any sort of, even if it wasn't outward discrimination, any sort of discrimination while you were just in school in terms of maybe being overlooked or a teacher acting a certain way? Or
we're talking about undergrad or law school? Law school was just, it was just different. Because again, I started at Thurgood. Right. So Thurgood is Texas Southern, right. And it's not as black as people would probably think it is. Yeah, because that's it would be. Yeah, no. Okay. It is, Thurgood, I would say, was about a third African American, a third Hispanic, and a third white. Okay. And a lot of our HBCU law school, by the time you get to that level, like law school, they tend to be real diverse. They don't look really very much like the undergrad. But it was just different to go. It was really a culture shock for me because at Texas Southern, my professors cared. I mean, they cared. They still were keeping up with me. Like, one of my professors two of my professors just passed away. One passed away probably about 6 months ago, and one just passed away about 2 weeks ago. But we're talking about people that were still keeping up with us. Like, that's how invested they are. University of Houston wasn't like that. Like, it was a little bit of a difference for me. Even you talk about con law. So we didn't take con law our first year. Interesting. But I was selected to be the tutor for income and 1Ls, my 2L year at Texas Southern, but then I transferred. So I was selected to tutor torts. I was really good at torts. So I was supposed to tutor torts, and my professor for torts also taught con law. And so when we transferred and they were like, okay, you got to take con law because y'all didn't get it your first year at Texas Southern, I didn't understand a word that my professor was, I didn't, it was like she was speaking a whole other language. And so I would actually go towards the end, because we took multiple tests at Texas Southern throughout the year. But at University of Houston, you got one test at the end of the semester. And so here we are coming up on the end of the semester, and I got to pass con law. I don't know anything. I'm like, mind you, I'm now a civil rights lawyer, but like, I knew nothing in the moment, right? And so I went and talked to Professor Wheaton, that's his name, he's still around. And I was like, Professor Wheaton, I just need you to teach me because I don't know what this woman had talked about. And so I just went like 2, maybe 3 days max. And I went and talked to him. And he is the one that actually taught me con law so that I could pass my course. Damn. Like, yeah. So that's what I experienced. I felt like they overlooked probably almost everybody. Oh, wow. It was just a different world. We were so loved and taken care of at Texas Southern, and then it was just like, figure it out. Yeah, it was sink or swim at University of Houston.
What would you say your best moment of law school was? Pick like a moment.
Best moment. I still would go back to, oh man, it was wild. It would have to be something at Texas Southern for sure. Okay. So either showing up to class and taking everybody off, because I hated, the books were so big and heavy. They were. We had the roller bags. That's when everybody started doing the roller bags, because the books were so big and heavy. I would not come to class with a book. I would sit down in class. I would have done my work. So I know exactly what all we're supposed to be talking about. And I wouldn't come to class. And early on, the professors didn't know what to do with that. Like, so they were thinking I hadn't done my work. So they would call on me. And I'd be like, I'd tell the person sitting next to me, give me your book real quick or whatever. And they would give me their book. But I always knew what I was talking about. To the point the professors was like, okay, never mind. Because they just assumed or thought.
Because you didn't bring the book.
Yeah, and my classmates would be like, we've been up all night and we still don't understand, and you would just pop up and, but it was because I found law school to be the most relevant education that I could ever get. Like, I could always say, oh, this is like that, like whether it was property or criminal law or, not really con law, but almost everything else, like I could literally be like, oh yeah, and it just really clicked with me. So it would be that, or it would just be the fact that I Amjured. I don't know if do y'all do Amjured? I don't know, but I came in number one. In contracts.
Okay.
Yeah, so so we got to the end of the year, and while I was selected to be the tutor for torts, and while I was really good at everything, but the fact that I was number one in my entire class in contracts, I was like, oh, there we go. So yeah.
Definitely. What would you say is your biggest motivator or inspiration? Because to become who you've become and go through the challenges, even just graduating from law school, people so tired of me quoting this quote, but less than 5% of lawyers are black. And then I don't know if you know the statistic off your head. I don't know the statistic of how many black congresswomen there are. I'm sure that number is very small too.
Yes. So currently we have 31 black women. We have a total of 60 members of the Black Caucus. So we have more black women than black men.
Okay.
I think this is a first. In addition to that, there's been, I believe, 57 total black women to ever walk the halls of Congress.
Okay. So
it's a small number.
Right. You're basically a unicorn. Okay. You can pop your collar and say you're a unicorn. You are a unicorn.
It's a small number. Yeah. I think, every once in a while I kind of wake up and I'd be like, how and why did I get here? Right? Like, it still kind of just throws me off because there are people that have planned their entire lives and this was a part of their plan and it wasn't a part of mine. And they don't get elected. But I take it as a great privilege. But for me, what motivates me definitely doesn't have to do with the title. The title, much like practicing law, was a matter of being able to do the work that I want to do. So it's like, all right, this is the ugly that I got to go through to get to doing what I want to do. I'm inspired by the next generations. When you look at the compassion specifically that Gen Z has, and their heart for people, whether it's their hearts as it relates to what's going on in the Middle East and the Palestinians, whether it's, them really being forward thinking on climate, whether it's them having love for the entire LGBTQIA community and not judging, but instead standing in solidarity with so many of their friends and allowing them to be who they are without judgment, or whether we're talking about even diversity. You don't see them segregating off as often as prior generations, but instead you see them loving on one another. And so, I am inspired by them because I feel like Gen Z is exhibiting everything that America claims to stand for, but is obviously struggling to live up to those claims right now. And I want to do my part to make at least America become as beautiful as she says that she is. And that includes making sure that we get guns off the streets, which is yet another thing that Gen Z has been so big on, because this is an entire generation of people who literally have had to do active shooter drills. Something that I've never done, something that I never thought about, but it's created a whole different world. And it's not necessarily the happiest. But, we're talking about a very informed group of people that are really fighting tooth and nail for us to get better. And that inspires me.
Well, we'll say you have a huge fan of obviously other millennials, but obviously Generation Z. This is why you went viral, right? Because people were reposting like she told them off in that impeachment inquiry. So, at the end of the day, you definitely inspired this next group. What would you say to someone that wanted to pursue, becoming because I know this wasn't your plan, but now that you've done it now, what would be a piece of advice for someone if they, like, I don't want to say steps, because I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
no,
just
no, no.
one big piece of advice that if this is something that you consider at any point in your life, what would be your best piece of advice if someone's going to run?
I tell people all the time, get involved. So most people don't know I was helping to get people elected to office for years before I ever ran for office. And when people will come and say, hey, what should I do if I want to run for office? I tell them to go volunteer on somebody else's campaign.
Okay.
And I would tell them to volunteer on a campaign that more so mirrors the position that they're seeking, right? So if I'm seeking a city position, then go and volunteer on a city council race, because that'll give you that side of it. When you are talking about being in elected office, it's not just running for the position, it's also governing. And so learning about what it takes to actually win the seat, as well as understanding what it takes to actually stay in the seat, are the two things that you need to focus on. And so, you know, for me, I think that I'm not allowed to sit in this position of privilege, as we've denoted how many Black women have not been able to walk the halls of Congress as a congresswoman. We take a ton of interns because I believe in exposure.
Okay.
So I tell people all the time, find a mentor, go and volunteer on a campaign, and also go and intern or get a fellowship within the type of office that it is that you think you want to run for. And ultimately, if you're a little bit older and you're like, I don't know if they taking me as an intern, go and try to get appointed to a board of some sort. So we know a lot of our cities have boards and commissions. Go and try to do that same thing on the county levels, even on the state levels. Federal level is going to take a lot for you to get appointed, but go and get appointed in some way. That will tell you what it looks like to be on a board of governance, because all of these positions, they somehow are governing bodies. And so you learn kind of procedures. You also make really good connections. So it's not just about doing it. It's really about who am I meeting, right? And it's learning. So it's like, you know what, I was on this campaign and their finance stuff was all messed up. Don't want to do that. But their field game was thebomb.com and such does fields. Like, you need to establish these relationships, and that will make it easier for you when the time does come.
Last question. We know that you were a public defender. You helped with some pro bono cases with George Floyd. I'm sure during the George Floyd protests, ourselves, the Black lawyers, we even did like a lawyer directory for people that wanted to help peaceful protesters. So, you know, your career has just ranged from everything. Even though my good friend, attorney Lee Merritt, who was on season 1, I interviewed him for season 1. What would you say to someone that wants to go to law school? Like,
just do it.
And like, they want to do it, but they're like, I don't know where to start. You know, typical, like, all right, study for your LSAT, even though some law schools are getting rid of that. But like, best piece of advice for someone trying to do law school.
Just do it. Just do it. I tell people all the time that it's the most valuable degree that you can have. It's recession proof. For sure. You know, obviously not everyone is going to go out and hang a shingle, but the reality is that everyone can. So you never have to sit there and worry about your boss or that situation, because you will always be able to make money. And unlike being a doctor or a dentist or something like that, or even a mechanic, like, you don't have to buy a bunch of equipment. All you need is a laptop and a phone and you are good to go. And so I tell people it's the most valuable degree, not to mention, even if you never want to practice law, you can go and get almost any job that you want to get, because the law touches everything that we do, whether it's contracts that you're having to read, whether it's property acquisitions, or whether it's like, it doesn't really matter. Like, it goes across the gambit. You know, I was just talking to some oil and gas folk, and I was telling them that one of my classmates, he got out of law school. I'm pretty sure he took the bar, but he never practiced law. Like, he's been doing oil and gas stuff. Like, it's just, there's nothing that you can't do with your law degree. So I think that it's worthwhile to do it. Don't, you know, mortgage your entire world for it. You know, go where the money is, but go and do it. And the only person that can tell you no is yourself. And that's if you just don't even try. There is some school that will take you. And when you go and soak up as much knowledge as possible, because this is real life experience that you're gaining that will be invaluable to you in your future.